Thank you all for coming. Is this working? During the pendency of this investigation, we've heard over and over again the word justice, the cry for justice. The public has been crying for justice for Kelly. In order to make sure that justice has been done, the Orange County District Attorney's Office was entrusted with the task of investigating this case and getting to the truth. Since July 7th, we've been in pursuit of the truth as to all of the facts and circumstances of this case to try to determine what happened on July 5th at the Fullerton bus depot. Our office took our responsibility faithfully and seriously. We executed the task thoroughly and efficiently. In Orange County, we generally trust our law enforcement, and we have good reason to. I believe that law enforcement in Orange County is second to none. My office works every day with thousands of police officers from 26 different agencies. They're hardworking. They make daily sacrifices to protect and to serve our community. We must do everything that we can to ensure that we protect this trust, including, if necessary, prosecuting police officers who violate the law. In our pursuit of the trust, the Orange County District Attorney's Office conducted a thorough investigation over the span of 11 weeks. You'll get a full and extensive list of all of the evidence that we've considered, but it includes videotapes, including those from 2 cell phones, the surveillance video from the Fullerton Transportation Center, the poll camera there, bus videos, 151 witnesses, police reports written by all of the involved Fullerton Police Department personnel, medical reports, examination of physical evidence such as batons and tasers, the coroner's report. We also conducted all relevant legal research to determine the applicable law as it applies to this case. After considering all of the law and all of the evidence in this case, I'm charging Officer Manuel Ramos with second-degree murder, 1 felony count of second-degree murder. And I'm also charging Officer Ramos with 1 felony count of involuntary manslaughter. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of 15 years to life in state prison. Corporal J. Cicinelli is charged with 1 felony count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 felony count of the use of excessive force. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of 4 years in state prison. The biggest shame about this case is that it didn't have to happen. It could have been avoided. It never should have happened. We're alleging the following facts to support the charges in this case. Ramos set in motion the events that led to the death of Kelly Thomas by committing an act that was dangerous to human life with conscious disregard for that life. His actions were reckless and created a high risk of death or great bodily injury, and any reasonable officer would know that acting the way Ramos did would create such a risk. Cicinelli used excessive force when he assaulted and beat Kelly Thomas, acting recklessly, under color of authority, and without necessity. At about 8:37 p.m. on July 5th, Ramos and Wolf responded to the Fullerton bus depot in separate vehicles. Ramos knew Kelly Thomas from prior contacts as a homeless person who hung out in the area. He did not believe that Kelly Thomas posed him any risk. Kelly Thomas was shirtless, with a backpack, wearing pants with no obvious bulges. The officers did not think Kelly Thomas even needed to be patted down for weapons. During the detention, Officer Wolf stepped 10 to 15 feet away behind his vehicle. He went to the rear of his vehicle to review the contents of the backpack that Kelly Thomas had been wearing when they arrived at the scene, while Ramos gave instructions to Kelly Thomas from 2 feet away from Kelly Thomas. It was obvious that Kelly Thomas had difficulty following Ramos's instructions. His instructions were to sit with his legs outstretched with his hands on his knees. It would be obvious to any reasonable observer that Kelly Thomas had cognitive issues and that he had difficulty following Ramos's instructions. After several minutes of increasingly aggressive instructions, the bus depot video shows Ramos escalating the contact into a physical altercation. It was 16 minutes from the initial contact to the beginning of the physical altercation and the engagement of unlawful police conduct. Ramos made a deliberate showing of putting on latex gloves in front of Kelly Thomas. He approached Kelly Thomas and he stood over him. Ramos repeatedly instructed Kelly Thomas to sit with his hands on his knees and his legs outstretched, and Kelly Thomas had trouble following that instruction. He would move his hands from his knees to behind his back at times, and he would fold his legs up in a sitting position, bending his knees. Ramos stood over Kelly Thomas. With a pair of latex gloves, and he made a demonstration in front while he was standing over Kelly Thomas in a very menacing manner, demonstration of putting on those gloves. When he put the gloves on, and I have to refer to some language here. It's not my language, but it's the language that was used by the officer, so it's necessary for us to refer to it. When he put the gloves on, he ordered Kelly Thomas, "Put your hands on your effing knees." Ramos leaned over Kelly Thomas in this most menacing way. He made 2 fists with his gloves on, 2 fists. He lifted his fists to Kelly Thomas in front of his face so that he could see them. And he said, "Now see my fists? They're getting ready to F you up." That declaration was the turning point. It was a defining moment. Ramos was telling Kelly Thomas at that moment that this encounter had changed, that it went from a fairly routine police investigation, a fairly routine police detention, to an impending beating by an angry police officer. By making this declaration of violence against Kelly Thomas, Ramos instilled in that victim fear, a reasonable fear for his life. A police officer who wanted to F him up with his fists. Police officers have a right to use reasonable force in the performance of a lawful duty. But citizens have a right to self-defense even against the police. If the police are using excessive force, if they're not performing a lawful duty. Ramos took this contact from a lawful detention to an unlawful use of excessive force when he lifted his fist and told Kelly Thomas that he was getting ready to F him up. There followed a brief exchange of words as Kelly Thomas remained seated. Ramos then grabbed Kelly Thomas behind his arm. And Thomas pulled away. He stood up and he started taking steps away from Officer Ramos. Then the baton came out. Kelly Thomas put his hands up, palms out, in a defensive position, palms open. Ramos yelled at Kelly Thomas, "Get on the ground." Officer Wolf, seeing this altercation, came running out from behind his car The evidence is that he joined, came running out from behind his car to assist with the arrest that Officer Ramos was doing. The evidence does not indicate that Officer Wolf had any knowledge of this exchange that had just taken place between Officer Ramos and Kelly Thomas. The evidence does not indicate that Officer Wolf had any knowledge that Officer Ramos was engaged in unlawful police conduct. The physical altercation began as Officer Ramos swung his baton and chased Kelly Thomas. Ramos punched Kelly Thomas several times in the left ribs after tackling him to the ground. Using his hand to hold Kelly Thomas's neck, partially laying on Kelly Thomas to use his body weight to pin Kelly Thomas to the ground, and holding him for other officers who were responding to the scene because there was a call for help, to use their physical force against Kelly Thomas. Ramos caused Officer Wolf to come to his aid and to apply force on Kelly Thomas, including tackling him, kneeing him, punching him 3 or 4 times, and using his body weight, holding and pinning Kelly Thomas to the ground. Cicinelli arrived at the scene at about 8:45 p.m. He kneed Kelly Thomas twice in the head and used his taser 4 times on Kelly Thomas. Taser that looked like this. 3 of the times were a stun drive, contact, and fire the taser, and each of these times lasted about 5 seconds. The 4th was a dart deployment. 2 darts fired from the end of the taser, connected to wires, and the darts affixed to Kelly Thomas for approximately 12 seconds. Kelly Thomas screamed and yelled in pain while he was being tased. Cicinelli used the front of the taser to hit Kelly Thomas in the face 8 times in the facial area, 8 times, while Kelly Thomas was pinned to the ground with the weight of the other police officers' bodies. All of this hitting with the taser happened, and there was no audible response from Kelly Thomas at that time. When Kelly didn't scream in response to these blows, it should have indicated to Cicinelli that Kelly was down and seriously hurt. The rest of the police officers who arrived at the scene, Officer Hampton, Sergeant Craig, Corporal Blakeney, arrived in response to the calls for assistance. The evidence does not show any knowing participation in an unlawful act on the part of any of these 3 officers, and therefore no charges are being filed against them at this time. From what's visible on the videotape, Kelly Thomas appeared to be acting in self-defense, in pain, in a state of panic. His numerous pleas of, "I'm sorry, I can't breathe, help, Dad," all to no avail. Screams, loud screams, didn't help. Kelly Thomas not responding when the blows to his face occurred, no help. A growing pool of blood as Kelly Thomas became unresponsive. Ramos is charged with murder for recklessly creating this dangerous situation that placed Kelly Thomas's life in jeopardy, and also creating a volatile situation for the other police officers responding to the scene. We simply cannot accept that in our community that it's within the police right to place gloves on a police officer's hands and put his fists in front of a detainee and say, "These fists are ready to F you up." That is not protecting and serving. Ramos had to know that he was creating a situation where Kelly Thomas would fear for his life and was struggling to get away from an armed police officer who was going to F him up. Ramos knew that the other officers would come to his aid and assist in applying force to Kelly Thomas. Ramos knew when he did that Kelly Thomas was going to get hurt, badly hurt. The cause of death in this case is it's mechanical compression of the thorax, making it impossible for Kelly Thomas to breathe normally. In other words, the chest being compressed, Kelly Thomas is not able to inhale, and he can't take in oxygen. Over time, his brain was deprived of oxygen, and he became unconscious and went into a coma and died. That is the primary cause of death. The other injuries to the face and head contributed to the death. It falls so far short of the professional and reasonable police conduct that our community has every right to expect and do receive by thousands of police officers from so many different agencies in our county every day. Police officers who put their lives at risk to protect the rest of us. All of the people in this great country of ours have a constitutional right to be free from the imposition of unlawful and excessive force under color of law. That is the rule of law, and we will proceed to enforce it. Thank you, and I'll call on you if you have any questions.